Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy Roll Good. We are finishing off our series here for the Martial base class changes for Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook 2024. We are moving on to rogues in this video, and rogues have been pretty remarkably revised. They've had a few, they haven't really been big changes, they're really small changes that kind of expand on what the rogue was already doing. There are a few nerfs here and there, that some of which I don't really understand, but we'll take a look at what those are, so let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Starting with the core traits, we can see that for the weapon proficiencies, rogues lost access to long swords. They have proficiency with simple weapons and martial weapons that have the finesse or light property. For skills, they had performance added to the list of skills that they could choose from. I don't know that this immediately has any synergies with any of their classes. I think the swashbuckler might have had something to do with performance, but I don't recall if they did or not. And then for starting equipment, much like every other class in 2024, compared to 2014, there's been a small change there, where previously in 2014, your starting equipment, you had to choose between two different kinds of equipment packages, essentially, or two different sets of equipment that you could choose from on a small list there. And then in 2024, instead, option A is just an equipment package, and then option B is basically the optional wealth option from 2014, but it's just a flat amount of gold. And usually this works out to be about the average amount that you could have rolled before. Sometimes it's slightly more, sometimes it's slightly less, but you can either choose an equipment package or you can just choose starting gold and then go buy all your equipment and inventory gear. Moving on to the multi-class inheritance. Again, this is what you get when you take a level in rogue from another class. As far as the core traits go, there's nothing that has changed. You still get all the stuff that you used to in 2014. And then a quick note here, they did lose the longsword proficiency, but longswords weren't really that good for rogues anyway, but because you can't use sneak attack with them because it's not a finesse weapon. There might be some magic swords that technically have the finesse property, and you technically now lost access to those if you were to ever get them. But for the most part, you couldn't really use long swords effectively anyway, so I think that's kind of why they just removed it in general. Now, moving on to level 1, we can see that there's a slight nerf to expertise as well, because you can no longer choose expertise in thieves tools, whereas you could before in 2014. You just have to choose 2 of your skill proficiencies, and then you get expertise in those. Sneak attack specifies that the damage type is the same type as the weapon, whereas it didn't before. Just a small clarification to kind of specify where that damage is coming from in case you have multiple sources of damage, like a hunter's mark or anything like that. Thieves' Cant now grants an additional language, up from only granting the Thieves' Cant sort of pseudo language. So Thieves' Cant is, of course, the sort of secret code language that thieves use within the world of Dungeons and Dragons to kind of talk between each other without people understanding them. But you also just get an additional language, so you're a little more functional that way. It's not quite just this ribbon that you sometimes use here and there. And then finally, of course, at level 1, you also get access to weapon mastery. Rogues get access to 2 masteries at level 1, and they can exchange them, one or both of them, each long rest if they find new weapons and want to just master a different weapon overnight, I guess. And much like the ranger and the paladin, they only ever get 2 masteries, unlike the barbarian and the fighter that get more as they level up. And then again, I'm really confused about the change to the expertise, not having expertise in thieves tools. I don't know if it's because they added that option where if you are proficient in a tool and are also proficient in the skill check you're making with that tool, that you also have advantage on that roll. Maybe they didn't want it to be that, because these tools are often a sleight of hand check, and sleight of hand is often a skill that you will choose as a rogue. So if you have expertise in these tools and proficiency in sleight of hand, then you not only have advantage on the roll, but you have expertise as well. So you're just almost guaranteed to make those rolls. But they also get, what do you call it? What's the word? The feature, again, we'll get to it later, but the feature that makes it so that you can't roll below 10 later. So it's like you're going to get that anyway. So I don't know why they changed it. It was a little weird change to me. So, and again, I think that makes the artificer the only class that gets tool expertise at all. And it kind of makes sense that the artificer would, but it's weird that no other class now can. So that's a little strange. Moving on to level 5, we have the Cunning Strike. This was a new feature added to the rogue that basically allows them to sacrifice a number of sneak attack damage dice to do something additional on hit, so adds some utility to sneak attack. I think one of the I don't know if I'd call it a critique of this, is that it basically just takes away damage from the rogue to allow them to do more. I don't think that's necessarily the best argument for it, because you can always just choose to do more damage if none of the options for Cunning Strike are relevant at the time, or if you just think that doing more damage is more valuable at that time. And does it say that it can only be used on your turn? It doesn't. So you can technically do this at least twice per turn if you're able to set up 2 sneak attacks, like with a Sentinel attack, or if you have a readied action with haste or anything like that. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. So at level 5, you get 3 different options for Cunning Strike. So again, when you hit with a sneak attack, you can choose one of these options. So for poison, it says that the cost is 1d6. I believe at level 5, you would have 3d6 for your sneak attack. So you'd go from 3d6 down to 2d6 and attempt to poison the target. So it says you add a toxin to your strike, forcing the target to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the target has the poison condition for 1 minute. At the end of each of its turn, the poison target repeats the save, ending the effect on itself on a success. And then to use this effect, you must have a poisoner's kit on your person. I think it's kind of interesting that you don't need to be proficient in a poisoner's kit. You don't need to actually know how to use poison or make poison, but you can just, add it to your blade, and, you're not at any risk of poisoning yourself. But I don't know, just a funny thing that I thought. Moving on, there's the trip option. Again, cost 1d6 from your sneak attack. If the target is large or smaller, it must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or have the prone condition. It only affects large or smaller, which is kind of unfortunate because larger creatures typically have worse dexterity saving throws, but it is what it is. And then withdraw, again, cost 1d6. Immediately after the attack, you can move up to half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Probably pretty good for ranged style rogues who maybe have an offhand dagger that they can stab with if they get caught in melee, but that way you can hit them with your sneak attack and then get away without provoking opportunity attacks. That's pretty good. And again, all 3 of these, trip is probably the most useful because it's very similar to the topple mastery, which is not something that rogues have access to, except that it does have that size condition. But I think, all these are pretty good. Poison, again, we'll have to see how the saving throws and everything shape out in the monster manual. None of these super excite me, but again, you can always just choose to do all of the damage for sneak attack. So I think Cunning Strike is pretty good. It kind of makes up for the facts that the rogues have limited access to different weapon masteries, so you can kind of consider these stand-ins for other weapon masteries as well. Overall, I very much like this feature. Moving on to level 7, we have Evasion. Evasion now no longer works if the rogue is incapacitated. We saw this change on the monk as well. And reliable talent was the feature that I was thinking of previously. This is now available at level 7. So again, reliable talent says that whenever you make an ability check that uses one of your skill or tool proficiencies, you can treat a d20 treat a d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10. So basically, if you're proficient in a skill or tool, whenever you roll, if you roll below 9, or if you roll 9 or lower, it's counted as a 10. So when you have expertise, when you have like a plus 12 to something, if you can't roll below 10, then you have a base roll of like 22 on that roll, right? So this is available now at level 7. It used to be level 11 in 2014. I think they kind of moved this up a little bit just so that it comes online earlier, because it's sort of like it's such a key feature for the rogue. It's something that rogues like having. It's kind of like the paladin aura for paladins, except reliable talent only helps the rogue, but it's kind of that sort of keystone of a feature. So I'm glad that they moved it up from level 11 to level 7, because again, a lot of published adventures, a lot of adventures in general don't last. Some of them go up to like 13, 14, but none of them really go beyond that. So it's good that you get this earlier so you can use it more often. And then at level 11, they had improved Cunning Strike added. So this is an expansion of the Cunning Strike feature that they got at level 5. So this now allows the use of 2 Cunning Strike effects per sneak attack, because previously you could just use 1, but you must spend the dice for each. You have 3 effects available at this level. Again, that was the withdraw, the poison, and the trip. So it's very situational that you'd probably want to use 2, but you can if you want, but you will get more options a little bit later. Moving on to level 14, Blind Sense, the feature that rogues had previously. This was just removed, which is unfortunate. And then they had Devious Strikes added. This is a new feature which adds new options to the Cunning Strike action that they got at level 5. So they had the Daze feature added, which cost 2d6, and so you're level 14. That means I think you have 7d6 at this time. So you'd go from 76 down to 5d6 for the sneak attack, and then you would attempt to daze the target. And daze says the target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw, or on its next turn, it can only do one of the following: move, or take an action, or a bonus action. So it can only make one of those choices, which is pretty powerful. It is a Constitution save, but you will find situations where, maybe not the big bad that is, very big and stocky and has good con saves, but maybe a lot of their minions, you can affect their action economy that way. The other one is knockout. This one costs 6d6. So you would go down to 1d6 on your sneak attack, and then you would attempt to knock them out. It says the target again must succeed on a Constitution saving throw, or it has the unconscious condition for 1 minute or until it takes any damage. The unconscious target repeats the save at the end of each of its turn, ending the effect on itself on a success. So it costs quite a bit of your damage, but it's pretty powerful if it lands. It's a little unfortunate that they get to repeat the save, but it'd be pretty powerful if they couldn't. So I kind of get it. And then finally you have Obscure, which costs 3d6. So you'd go from 7d6 at level 14 down to 4d6. And it says the target must succeed on a Dexterity saving throw, or it has the blinded condition until the end of its next turn. That one's pretty good too, because again, Dexterity is one of those saving throws where creatures are they're either really good at them or they're not very great at them. And you can usually tell whether, bigger targets usually have, lower dex saves, and smaller targets usually have higher dex saves. So you can kind of gauge when this one's going to be important. And again, remember that we got that feature previously that now allows us to use 2 Cunning Strike options per Cunning Strike. So if you wanted to, let's say, blind them and knock them prone, you could do that. If you wanted to blind them and poison them, you could try to do that. You could daze and knock them prone. You can do all these different things together now on a hit. Moving on to level 15, Slippery Mind now extends to Charisma saving throws. This was previously only Wisdom. So basically it means you gain proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. That's nice. I mean, more saving throws is always great. And then at level 19, of course, this is where Epic Boons are unlocked for rogues. And again, this is not a class-specific feature. This is just basically letting you know that when you hit level 19, that Epic Boons are unlocked. So if you are multi-classing as a rogue, if you hit like level 4 in rogue and then you have level 15 in another class, but your 4th level in rogue is your character level 19 level, then when you choose your feat for that level 4 rogue as a level 19 character, you can choose an Epic Boon instead of a general feat. Moving on to level 20, the Stroke of Luck feature. It turns a missed attack roll into a critical hit, whereas it was previously just a hit. Like you could guarantee a hit when you missed instead. And this now extends to saving throws up from just attack rolls and ability checks. So let's look at what that says. We can kind of put that together in our heads. It says, you have a marvelous knack for succeeding when you need to. If you fail a d20 test, you can turn the roll into a 20. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. So that's once per short rest. You can either guarantee a critical hit on an attack roll because you can turn the roll into a 20, right? Or it said it fails a d20 test. So this also affects ability checks and saving throws. So if there's an important saving throw you need to make, you can just say, I roll a 20 on this once per short rest, and then you just automatically succeed. So this is basically, if you have, what's the feature? The Mage Slayer feat, in addition to this, that's basically like 2 legendary resistance per short rest, because Mage Slayer comes back on a short rest as well. So if you were just saving these for important saving throws, you could just always succeed on them pretty much. So that's very powerful. This feature was always pretty good, but now it's just much better. Because again, you have sneak attack, so if you can just turn things into a critical hit once per short rest, you're going to be rolling so many dice. And of course, that's one thing we love to do as players. So looking at the summary for rogues, we can see that skills were buffed, expertise was slightly nerfed. I didn't mention the weapons here. Again, they did lose access to the longsword. I don't really think that's a buff or a nerf necessarily. You might call it whatever you think it is. Thieves' Cant was buffed because it gives you an additional language. We can see Weapon Mastery, Cunning Strike, Improved Cunning Strike, Devious Strikes, and then of course the Epic Boon. These were all new buffs that were just added to the rogue. That's why they're highlighted in green. Evasion was nerfed slightly because it can't be used while you're incapacitated, which makes sense because if you're sleeping, you're not really dodging a fireball. Reliable Talent was buffed because it's available now much earlier. Blind Sense was nerfed because it's removed. Slippery Mind was buffed, Stroke of Luck buffed, and again, we see that there's a few nerfs here, but I do like putting all the summary, all the changes here on one page, just because we can see just kind of across the board, again, classes are just buffed. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing more damage, but they are just, like the Rogue here has even more utility than they did previously due to Cutting Strikes, even more utility due to Weapon Masteries. They're a little more resilient now due to the Slippery Mind now applying to charisma saving throws, and Stroke of Luck now also applies to saving throws if you're a level 20 rogue. Again, getting that, essentially a legendary resistance if you're saving them for saving throws. So again, about 1.5 features are removed with the loss of Thieves' Tools and the expertise option. Again, there were no real damage buffs for the rogue, which I think is something some people might be complaining about. But one piece of feedback I saw is that the only people complaining that rogues aren't doing more damage in 2024 are the people who weren't really rogue mains, so to speak, because the people who love to play rogues are generally very excited about the changes here because it just allows the rogue to be more like a rogue, which is kind of a big design goal that they mentioned in the UA, is that they're just trying to make every class feel like that class a lot more. So again, Stroke of Luck is maybe the first time a character can critically hit on demand. That is a very nice feature to see. We didn't really have that before, except out of maybe the the Divination Wizard with their portents. But then again, that wasn't guaranteed that you'd get a natural 20, each day. Whereas the Rogue now at level 20 can do this once per short rest, which is pretty crazy. So I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do when you can guarantee a critical hit. So it's very exciting to see. So let me know what you think about the rogue changes here. Is there anything particular that you're excited about? Are there any combos for the Cunning Strikes that you think are particularly powerful? I haven't really dug into them too much. None of them really excite me. The second round of Devious Strikes or the Cunning Strikes, the Devious Strikes level of them, I think are all very interesting. The level 5 ones aren't that great except for maybe the Trip one. But let me know what you think. Are there any particular rogue builds that you're looking forward to doing in 2024? And again, while you're going down to those comments, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to these videos yet and you keep clicking on them and watching them to the end like you are now, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.